Hello, adventuresses. Woo! We're here
Hi.
today. Ucha's in a different time zone, so it's actually sunny where she is, it looks like.
Yeah.
Not pitch
Awesome.
black behind me, so
Yeah,
something of a change.
exactly. But unfortunately, no sounds of chickens barking.
Might be a couple of birds from the garden today.
Yeah, awesome. So today is a really fun topic. Weird things horses do on the trail, or silly little things that they do. And some of you might have experienced some of these, or maybe you have some fun, like different ones. So let us know in the comments down below. Like, let us know what some of the weird horsey moments that you've had while you were out trail riding. And this is a fun one. I've definitely ridden a lot of like green horses, and I mean, baby horses always do funny things. So lots of funny things to talk about today. And yeah, thank you, Heather and Ucha, for joining me today.
Well, thanks again for having us. It's always fun to get together for these live episodes where we can really interact with our followers, with the listeners, and don't forget to definitely throw in the comments where you're from and all those funny things that your horse does. Now, Crystal, you mentioned green horses. Well, I've been on green horses and old faithfuls that behave like they've never left the yard before. So I think this is going to be a really fun topic.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get into it then. Heather, I'll let you start with, because I know you were excited about one of the ones.
So, I have done a fair amount of trail riding in the mountains, on the flat, just wherever. But one of the funniest things was one of the rides I was on, there were lots of like water crossings, and some were, more of like substantial, more like a river or, compared to just a creek. And this one horse would, like, if you get tired, he would just like start to sit down or start to lay down. And it's like, whoa, we're in the water. No, you can't do that. And it wasn't because they were like exhausted and were gonna like die. No, they were just like, oh, it's nice and cool. I think I'll have a bath. So I always thought that was so, that I'm like, you're not supposed to lay down when we're riding. Why are you doing it now? So that was one funny thing. I have lots of other funny little stories to tell about horses. But what about you, Ucha? What are some of the funny things that your horses have done while you've been out on a trail ride?
Loads, of course. I mean, continuing with the water, like we once had on a ride, we took a horse of a friend. So our horses are really like, they know everything, and they've really been like on so many trail rides. Even the young ones, I train them up. But that horse, of course, was a bit of a black box because it was from a friend. So I had her like 2 days. I just checked her out and said, okay, she's a good riding horse. No issues with anything. But of course, I didn't water test her. So we went out up in the mountains, and there's one day you have to cross a lot of times. It's basically the same river. You ride on the left side, then you cross over the right side, then you head a little bit further on, you cross again. And this horse did not like water. And of course, I had no idea. So we were standing there. All the other horses crossed the water, and that horse, nope, no water crossing. And oh my God, water is going to eat me. And okay, the rider tried, and, we tried different things. Everyone crossed, and she stayed back, and we went a little bit ahead. The things you do try out, nothing worked. Okay, fine. I went back. I tried to pony along over. No chance. Okay, so I got down. I left my horse on the other side with another rider, and then I jumped in the water, and I basically led her through the water, and that was the only thing which worked. She went over with me, but of course I had to be in the water right up till my thighs. So fortunately, it was a warm day, but of course, my breeches, my chaps, my boots, my socks, everything was totally wet. So, and we had to cross this river a couple of times. So the first 2 crossings, I had to lead her. Then it was okay, and she would follow. And by the end of the day, she was totally fine. By the end of the ride, she was perfect with water. But I had to basically take off all my stuff during lunch break to get it dry a bit. And I think I ended up riding with wet socks for the rest of the day.
Oh, yucky. What about you?
I was just going to say, though, Ucha, that story sounds familiar in our Horse Nomads book when you were riding to the push car fair. Yeah, and I definitely really enjoyed your story. It was one of those like Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will, and you were having like one mini crisis after mini crisis after mini crisis after mini crisis. And it was definitely it's always funny reading about other people's mini crises.
I know. As long as we can laugh about them, afterwards, it's totally fine. It's when you're there and you're thinking, oh my God, I mean, that you have so many kilometers ahead and this horse doesn't go over the river and you're like, oh shit, what I do? But yes, so.
Well, and sometimes they cross it going, but then they come back and they're like, nope, that was horse eating water now. From this angle, it looks different and I can't go over it. Or they try to jump over top of it. So
that's my little mare Lily. My little mare Lily, when we first got her, I love her so much. She jumps like sunbeams, and I taught her how to jump. So she decided she has to jump everything. And I was riding her, and there was like a perfect little sunbeam, and it was like a beautiful little jump. She just like, woo, cleared it. And it was just so adorable because you're not expecting, a sunbeam jump in the middle of the wilderness. But there you go. I definitely, because I've ridden a lot of green horses, you always have these like things that you can't fathom, but somehow your babies can fathom it and they're doing it. And I remember I was in Bhutan, and there's this really sketchy, they call it a bridge. It's not a bridge. It's just two little boards that my big brother Acho put like on the swamp for us to ride across. And you can actually see it in one of our YouTube videos. I think I even called it like, that's a bridge, what? And so I'm riding in Bhutan, and all the other horses are like pro little mountain ponies, like, been there, done that. And this little baby decided that the wooden boards was, I don't know, too much for her. And she kept jumping off of the boards into the swamp. And I mean, like, she's almost belly deep in the swamp. So she would jump off of the boards and then realize that it's really horrible in the swamp, and then jump back on the boards and then take 2 steps and hear her like little hooves on the boards and jump off again. And like, we just had this like war for, I don't know. It was a whole lot of wooden boards because it was a whole lot of swamps. So she did it quite a few times. And then finally, I think I convinced her to just stay on the boards. But that was definitely one of those, like, in the moment, it's not as fun, but it's still one of those things that you just got to deal with. And then I was another time, this is not something that happened to me, but I was riding in Oklahoma. I actually lived in Oklahoma for a couple of years. Not everyone knows that. And I was riding on this trail with this guy who's a stunt rider. And he used to like ride under the belly of the horse in full gallop and steer them. Like, I don't know, these stunt riders, like they're crazy. And so he was training a green horse for future stunt riding this. And we were going down this really steep, like, slope, and this horse had been all over the place, like, the whole ride. And he was cursing and swearing. He's like a super cowboy, got his cowboy hat, and cursing and swearing at this little baby because it just can't go in a straight line. So we're going down this really steep bank, and he actually, in mid, like, the horse is going down, I don't know, one of those, like, Man from Snowy River moments, he kind of jumps off and is, like, rolling down this mountain beside his horse, like somersaulting, like the Princess Bride or something. And he gets to the bottom and like lands on his feet and jumps back onto this horse. And I remember I watched the whole thing and I was like, no, that's some real, that's some real stunts right there. So yeah, it was, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's always a question, was it intentional or unintentional?
I asked him afterward. I think he was, I couldn't tell because he was either playing it off like it was supposed to be.
I know.
Or that was one of his stunts.
A similar thing happened to me when we were out on a day ride, and we were basically riding on a ridge over the river as well, but there was no water. It was just a dry riverbed, and it was sandy. So I was already thinking, it's a very, very narrow path. So I said, okay, let me go first and let's see whether that's going to hold us or not. And it didn't. It gave way, and me and my horse, we kind of went heads first down, and I did a somersault, just one, and basically landed on my bottom, and both of us slid it down that slope and ended up in the riverbed. Fortunately, it was all sandy, so none of us got hurt. But my 2 riders were on top, and they were asking, "Are you all right down there?" So I couldn't pass that off as intentional.
Well, and then you wonder what the horses are thinking. Like, you go first and see what's down there. I had a horse that he like. in the pasture, he was medium in the pecking order, but if you were out on a trail ride, he had to be at the front. And he had this one particular mare that he liked, that he would like to ride beside her. And then he was constantly torn between, well, I want to be at the front, but I want to be with her. And the whole, so he'd be at the front, and you could see he was always turning his head, looking to see where she was. And if another rider was riding beside her, he would slow down and kind of like bully the other horse away. And then he would go back to his lead position. And it was so funny because I'm like, you are a turd, because you have to be at the front. But, and he was, I would say he was brave. Like, he would go and, he would cross over the water and that kind of stuff. But boy, if someone interfered or was like moving in on his woman, he was completely out of sorts. So he was a funny guy.
Yeah, we've definitely I've seen that a few times where horses are like, that's my pal.
That's my buddy, exactly.
Yeah, that's my buddy. My mare Lily, when we were riding across Ireland, she got in the habit, because every evening we would knock on like random people's doors and see if they have a field for the night for our horses. Well, Lily, she's so smart, and she kind of figured out this game. So every evening she would by herself start looking for a field. She didn't quite understand that like she needed permission to like ask so she would like find a field and like, that's our field for tonight. And she would start like leading me to these fields. And so I would have to like tell her like, no, Lily, we have to find the house attached to the field. And sometimes there are no, like, you can't see any houses attached to that field, and you never know which farm belongs to who. And so it was a really guessing game, but it was really funny, like watching her. It was always like the same time every evening, like, time to find a field. And that was her little evening mission. So I really enjoyed that.
Oh, sorry, Yusha, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I've been on a few rides on longer day rides on like I was up in the mountains, and the horses, or the group of horses that we had, obviously had done the route numerous times, and they knew, oh, this is the part where we turn and start to head back to camp, or those kind of things. And it's so funny how, they're a nice walk, trot, whichever you need. But then it's like, oh yeah, we're going home now. And all of a sudden their walk gets a little bit faster, and you can just tell there's a little bit more spring in their step. Ooh, almost home. And then they're always devastated if you take another turn. They're like, well, what do you mean? No, we go this way. This is the way that we go back to camp. And this one place that I've been fortunate enough to ride in the Rocky Mountains in Canada a couple times. This little guy, he's so sure-footed, and you're going down these steep terrain, and it really was, okay, all right, I'm just going to hold on, and I'm not going to look down, because that way is, a cliff. But yeah, he was always so slow and would get to the back of the group. But whenever we got to that point where he knew, okay, not much farther, all of a sudden I was like in the middle of the pack, and it was like, oh, I'm visiting with new people now. So it's funny, the little characteristics that horses have when they know a trail, or when they know, oh, it's time to go home, I'm going to get food or something like that.
Oh, yes, they do know their way, right? Yeah, when I first came to India and I started riding the stable, and I didn't know the routes yet. And there was kind of one way going back home, pretty much where we used to canter. So the cantering route was straight ahead, but there was a left turn on the way back home. And of course I didn't know, because it was my first time we cantered there. So no, my guide, of course, was the guy there. He said like, okay, let's see if she's a good rider. So we started cantering, and I was like, oh yeah, happy, great, and cantering. And suddenly my horse did like a 90-degree turn towards the left, and like, yeah, let's go home. And I was like, whoa, what is this? Of course, I had no idea. I was not prepared. And she really, without any warning. So woof, we got in the wrong direction. And it took me like a couple of, I don't know, maybe 50 meters to stop her and turn her around. I said, nope, we're definitely not going down this way. And of course, the guy riding with me, he was just sitting on his horse and grinning to himself, thinking, yes.
Yeah. I had something similar, and I will say in that moment I kind of regretted teaching our horses to play polo, because man, they can stop and turn quickly. But yeah, I had little Lily do the same with me. It was in a forest and I didn't recognize anything, but she knew where the turn was. I mean, I stayed on and everything was fine, but woo, she was quick. And she's, a compact little Arabian with no shoulders and no neck. It's very easy to go flying if you're not careful. Yes. So I was definitely like, whoa, that was close.
Yeah, exactly. They can just turn on a dime, can't they? And Marwari horses are just like Arabian horses, so they're just really quick about the turns. But it just happened to me once, never again.
Yeah, exactly. You're ready for it after that.
Yes, that was.
I saw a meme this week, which I thought was really appropriate for this show. And it was like the two horses are a cartoon. The two horses are standing there, and the two girls are getting ready. They look like they're getting ready to get on. And the two horses are like, okay, you jump over every little log you see and you start tripping every time. And it's like, okay, we've gone down this path how many times? You have to pick your feet up to walk over these little branches, and sometimes they trip, and sometimes obviously it's unintentional, but it does make you wonder if they're like, what made you think that little 2-inch thick twig was a 3-foot fence? So. But I always laugh when they if it's something a little bit more substantial that they have to step over, 18 inches or something like that. And then they get halfway over and they're like, I'm stuck now. I can't. So I think they are smarter than we give credit to at times. They're like, I feel like a break now. So I'm just going to pretend like this is too big for me to climb over.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed in a lot of different countries, sometimes the horses who are local to that area, you see the things that they're used to. And then you think about your little cushioned first world horses back home and you're like,
right,
I don't think they're going to cope well here. That definitely happened a lot in Bhutan where I was like, ooh, no way would I ever bring my horses here.
Yeah, then they need to be used to it. That's right.
Especially when you hear stories like, oh, your horse will know that there's a bear before you do, and they've seen the bears, they know what they smell like, don't worry. Or areas that you can trail ride where there's lots of cyclists. Some horses, it doesn't matter how many times they see a bike, they're going to spook at it. Or a plastic bag, or a bucket, or, it seems like, well, that bucket is scary on the trail. When there's food in it at home, that's totally okay. But if I see a bucket on the trail, no, that might eat me. Or
context. One of the scariest thing for my horses is people lying on the ground. People have no business lying on the ground. People should actually, stand around and walk, right? If they lie on the ground, it's definitely extremely spooky.
I love that comment, first world horses. Totally. The ones that live at home, that are like pampered. Oh, there's flies out. I'll get your fly sheet. I'll get your fly spray. And then you look at horses in Mongolia that are like, yeah, well, hopefully you stay tonight because you're not in a fence. And then magically they're there the next day. So absolutely, first world horses, that should be a new hashtag going around.
Yeah. I would definitely suggest if someone is, riding out on trails with unfamiliar horses, it's one of those be ready for anything, but sometimes you can't be ready for anything because it's unpredictable. But at the same time, Uta mentioned earlier, you have to just laugh. You have to just laugh and have fun with it. That's part of the adventure. And especially if you're in the middle of nowhere, you can't afford to get upset or stressed or worried about it. You have to just laugh and just move on with it. And it helps the horses as well. If you laugh, the horses also understand laughing. And they'll also be like, oh, I guess that rock wasn't as spooky as I thought it was.
Yeah, it definitely depends how you yourself feel or behave. Horses are great readers of emotions. So if we are scared of things, if we are uncomfortable, the horse doesn't understand if we are scared of the horse. It thinks oh, there's something spooky around. My rider is scared, so I must be scared. But the good thing about most of the trail horses is they are not scared of a lot of things. They know their job, and they're doing an amazing job out there, all the trail horses in the world.
Right. Things to be scared of. So where I live, lots of deer, always going through my pasture and everything. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking out the window. My horse was like running around like a crazy banshee. I'm like, what's going on? So I stood and watched for a while, and he kept looking down the one direction. I'm like, well, what's down there? And then a couple of minutes later, this young moose walked by. And first time I've seen a moose where I live. Moose wandered by, had a look at the horse, continued on. Well, my horse stood at the fence probably for 3 hours. Where did he go? Where did he go? And the moose, like, it was probably a year old, so it wouldn't have been much bigger than the horse. But yeah, he was like, what was that?
Yeah, that's
at this time of year, they don't have horns, so I guess they maybe was like, well, that's a weird looking horse. He kind of looked like me, but where did he go? And it was so funny because it came up to eat and then went right back to that same spot on the fence and looked. So yeah, wild animals definitely are something that they're curious of, but they're probably more afraid of us than we are of them.
It's crazy. I mean, we meet a lot of camels on the rides, and camels is always like, oh, what's that? Because the camel is bigger than the horse. But equally for the camels also scared of the horses. So mostly my horses are fine because they see camels fairly regularly. But of course, again, if they haven't seen camels for a little while, they again like, oh, what's that? Camel. Oh, okay, let's see. But of course, the camel equally is like, oh, what's that? Horses. I don't want to pass that close to the horse. So it's so funny. But one day, actually, we got an elephant on our farm. So that was kind of a photo shoot. And we thought, okay, it would be cool to have a photo shoot with the elephant and the horses. So that was the idea of the photographer, right? So we brought the elephant, and the elephant saw the horses, and the horses saw the elephant, exactly the same moment. And we had the horses with a couple of riders lined up coming towards the elephant. The elephant was there with the mahout sitting on top, all decked up, all, pretty done and stuff, and the fineries. Both of them saw each other. You could see the horses were like, oh my God. The elephant was the same thing. The tail of the elephant went up, it turned around, and it ran off. And the mahout was just clasping to the to the seat on top of to that kind of wooden platform, because obviously if the elephant runs, there's no way you can stop it running, and our horses also ran straight back to the stable. So that was it for the idea of photographing both of them together. So we did separate photography afterwards.
Oh, that's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually had an elephant spook with me when I was riding it once, and it was kind of like a horse. It kind of leapt in the air. It spun around 180, took off. Again, it was the little guide like holding on to the elephant, like you can't stop an elephant if it wants to take off. And it was like screaming to its friends, like, meh, meh. And it ran towards the other elephants, and it even kind of bumped into one of them. And luckily it stopped and it calmed down. But the reason it did that is because a semi truck had like been dropping off feed or something, and the air brakes went off. And when the elephant calmed down, and of course I'm laughing. I mean, like I ride horses all the time. And the little guy like holding on to the elephant kind of looks at me panicked, like, oh my God, I just almost killed my tourist. and I start laughing, and he was like, how old are you? And I think at the time I was like 22 or something like that. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're the same age as this elephant. She's just a baby. So that's why she did that. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and we have another comment from Valerie. My horse freaked out when he saw a mini horse being locked along the trail. Yeah, I felt bad for the poor mini. Hope he wasn't offended. That is so funny. Yeah, it's so funny. Our horses saw a bunch of minis for a horse show, like a mini horse show. And they also, for some reason, they don't like the little mini. Like, I think Lily's threatened by how cute they are. But yeah, she was very like, oh.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what goes through their minds of, when they're, see a miniature horse or see things that we just assume, well, that's horses and cows have been around forever. You just assume that they should know what it is, or well, that's just a small version of you, like a miniature horse, and a baby horse would be similar in size. So you'd think that they would be, but no. But then again, we're talking about horses that will spook over a weird looking leaf, or they're a creek that they walked through, a puddle that they drank out of a half an hour ago. Now they want to jump over top of it because there could be a horse eating shark in that puddle. But
you never know, right?
Yeah. I actually,
Yeah, sometimes it's funny. I mean, we sometimes encounter donkeys on the trail, and if the donkey's quiet, the horse usually looks at it, and that's fine. But when the donkey starts shouting, I don't know how you call that in English, ERing or whatever, then it's like the horses are like, they go crazy. I mean, they're like, what is this noise?
yeah.
Or it is
Our
funny.
mare, my husband's mare Q. Shout out to her because she's like the most bomb-proof thoroughbred I've ever seen. I think they used to like race her on the freeway, like semi trucks going by. Like she just doesn't even blink. She really doesn't care. But I was just gonna say donkeys. She saw donkeys for the first time ever in Ireland, and she did not like them. It was funny. It was our first day of this like 2-month grand adventure riding around. Our day one, we're like halfway until our destination for the night where we were going to be sleeping. And we'd been like, you know, cruising along just fine, everything fine. Like I said, semi trucks and this and that, buses, like nothing fazed her. And she saw donkeys and she didn't really spook. She literally just stopped, did a 180 and was like, we're going back the other way now. It was just so funny. And Christian also, I mean, he hadn't been ready for it, but he was just laughing. Like, that's the first time I've ever seen her actually spook.
Must be the ears.
It's something about them.
Definitely the noise they make. I mean, this is weird. I mean, that's definitely very weird. And for most if horses have an experience, I mean, I know a lot of horses are scared of cows. Not ours, because obviously in India you have plenty of cows running around all like everywhere. But in Europe, I know a lot of horses scared of cows.
Yeah, it is funny what they're afraid of. My horse loves our cat. He wants to like be friends with the cat and everything. But moose, he's scared of that. Or leaves, like a leaf, like when they're like blowing through the yard, those might bite him. So he has to like, if one even touches him as he's blowing by, he like the 180, oh my God, something just bit me. And it's like, really? It was a leaf. So, but yeah, no, it's so funny when you think about it, horses that have gone down the trail 100 times or one time, you know, they could go by and everything fine, but just maybe it's out of the corner of their eye, the reflection, the smell. The horse that walked over it 4 days ago left a smell, and all of a sudden we have to jump it. We have to, or when they like completely like go big wide spread around it. It's so funny. It'd be really interesting to be able to read a horse's mind, or if they're like, you know, say to their buddy, "Oh, watch this! I'm going to jump over this. Maybe she'll fall."
So we do have one comment from Carrie. It's long. Let's see if it shows up here. So she said once on a trail ride with her old horse Captain, she decided to stop and dismount at the bottom of a big hill to walk next to him. And then every ride after that, for the rest of his life, anytime she came to a hill, he would stop and turn his head so she could get off. I find that funny.
So funny. And but they get that, they have that characteristic of like, well, we did this last time, so
yeah,
time for you to get off. You know that. Oh, funny.
Creatures of habit. That's right.
Yeah. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a fun. Thank you guys so much who's been commenting and who watched us live. You know, let us know if you guys are watching the replay of this. Like, we still answer your questions and we still love to hear your stories. So let us know in the comments, you know, if you have any other funny, freaky things that horses have done with you on the trail. And you know what? That's why we love them. That's why we love horses so much.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we would just ride motorcycles.
Exactly.
So,
it's just, otherwise it would be so boring.
Exactly. Yeah. So awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me today. And thank you, everyone. And we will see you guys next week.
Yep.
Exactly.
Have a great week, everyone.
Exactly. Bye.